We are the leader in the material handling sector, primarily focused on lightweight aluminum material handling equipment. You might know it as a hand truck, a dolly, or a sack truck. If you see a hand truck with a red stripe on the side of it, you know it's a Magline. You know, we're a legacy company of 75 plus years. So our infrastructure was limiting our ability to kind of transform again that service experience. So when we realized that in order to take that next level of digital technical transformation, we're manufacturers of material handling equipment. That is not our core competency. And we looked at trying to find a strategic partner. We vetted a number of them, ultimately selected Ultra as our consulting partners, right? And it was going to be a commitment that we were going to go all in, right? And they helped us from the very onset of the project, from coming in, understanding our current processes, redefining what our future processes look like, and then helped us through that journey of technology evaluation, technology selection, and then ultimately contract negotiations.
I wanted to be challenged not only by Ultra, looking at best practices, but whichever vendor we went with, to also be challenged by them on our current thought process. Here's where we say we want to be. Sometimes it's easy for companies and people within them to fall back and stay where they're comfortable. Challenge us out of that. Like, no, you should be doing it this way, or here's really best practices out in the field on companies your size and how you're doing it. And based off of what we saw in our current state to where we wanted to see in our future state, we really needed something to push us to get there. After selection, going into the process of really kicking off our ERP implementation, we were looking at, do we use Ultra for that or don't we? So we made a decision like, let's try to do this ourselves.
About 12 months into it, we realized that this was not our core, right? There was awareness of competing internal priorities, and to some extent limited competency and capabilities, capacity challenges that we were facing in bringing the project over the finish, right? And it was the beginning of 2024 where we kind of paused and said, what's going to be required to move us forward? And we opted to bring Ultra in and said, hey, look, will you do literally a 30-day assessment from your perspective? Take a look at where we're at, be critical of Magline, and frankly, be critical of our vendor, and tell us from a third-party lens, how do you see we're doing, right? And they came in, did that 30-day kind of health check, and identified what was working, but more importantly, from their perspective, they identified the gaps, right? And at that point, it was, hey, you guys can continue, right? Just, but be mindful of the following. That's when we took a step back and said, man, why don't we just re-engage them?
We had to take that project management away from our team, push it back out to Ultra, and then that way we could focus more on what needed to be done rather than managing it from an IT lens, I guess.
And once we went through that kind of accountability matrix of who's responsible for what, then we kind of just, we hit the ground running, and we didn't lose any momentum. We didn't lose any time. And we're confident now, right? Because what they also brought, beyond just taking over the project management, it was, okay, we've got a gap here. What expertise can they bring to fill this gap that we would have simply looked internally for? Where we needed push within our vendor relationship, they knew which buttons to push.
I would say that without them coming back in, being that outside resource, we wouldn't be where we're at today.
And for us, it was easy to go and say, we're not great at this. And if we're not great at something, we look for partners who are great at that. And Ultra was that kind of partner that we could lean on from the very beginning of understanding current state to looking at future state, being agnostic to the software options that are out there, help us select the best that was going to meet our strategic goals and objectives, and then ultimately, as proven out, see us through to implementation. At the end of the day, you want to work with people that you trust, right? And I felt like we formed that trust very early on in the relationship, and that trust allowed them to really challenge us, right? It gets contentious, right? But when you don't think of them anymore as a supplier, but just an augmentation of your staff, you get that honesty that's required to help you transform your business. It's not what I want to hear, it's what I need to hear from a good partner. They provided that. They told us what we needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And I think that ultimately, solidifies the relationship and gets you through the good and the bad, right? Because these projects are going to have their highs and they're going to have their lows, right? It's, do you trust them during the lows to get you out of them? And Ultra's just demonstrated that over the years.